The river was a living thing. Not in the way elders described spirits, floating, whispering, shapeless shadows, but in a deeper, more deliberate way. It breathed. It sighed. It changed moods with the sky. When it was pleased, its surface shone like a sheet of polished obsidian. When it was angry, it churned like a beast with teeth made of waves. But most days, it simply watched. And on those days, it watched him. Kanu dipped his paddle into the water with a grace that came from years of repetition. The moon hung low, pouring silver across the river like a veil. Other fishermen refused to enter the water at night. They told stories of spirits that dragged men into the deep, of voices that called your name with the tone of someone you once loved. They spoke of mysterious drownings, strange disappearances, and the river goddess whose anger could bend storms. But Kanu never believed fear should guide a man's steps. He believed in understanding. Tonight, he moved with the same quiet confidence that had made him famous in the fishing village by the riverbank. His canoe cut through the water without disturbing the stillness. The night was unusually calm, no frogs croaking, no crickets singing, no wind rustling the reeds. It felt as though the entire world was holding its breath. But Kanu didn't flinch. He paddled on. His shoulders moved with steady rhythm, forward, pull, glide. His dark skin glistened with moonlight, and his eyes, sharp and observant, scanned the river as though he were reading a story written on the surface. Most men saw danger. Kanu saw patterns, currents, shadows, the subtle shift of the wind, the faint ripples caused by fish. The river had raised him. It had taken too, but he never blamed it. He had fished this water since he was 10, when his father first placed a paddle in his hand and said, "The river rewards patience, my son. But it punishes those who approach with pride." It was the river that fed their village, the river that shaped their days, the river that humbled their warriors. And when Kanu lost his brother during a storm, swept beneath the raging currents, he didn't curse the water. He didn't run. He simply learned. He studied the river. Every bend, every hidden root, every mood shift. He respected it. And the river, somehow respected him back. Kanu anchored his canoe and cast his net. The water shimmered beneath him, reflecting his image. He hummed, just a simple tune, something his mother used to sing while grinding spices. The melody warmed the air, turning the cold night into something gentle. That was when the river stirred. It was faint at first, a ripple where there should have been stillness. A swirl where the water should have been calm. Kanu stopped humming. He did not panic, but his senses sharpened, alert like a hunter in tall grass. Something moved below. Something watching. He leaned slightly, peering into the water. The moonlight caught the shifting currents, painting ghostly patterns beneath the surface. For a moment, he thought he saw eyes, two faint, luminous shapes staring back at him from the deep. He blinked. They vanished. Most men would have paddled away. Some would have prayed. Others might have frozen entirely. But Kanu simply released a breath and said quietly, "If the river watches me tonight, then let it watch." The night swallowed his words, carrying them across the water. And deep below, in a realm where mortals could not breathe, something listened. She listened. Nala, the river goddess, hovered in the darkness beneath Kanu's canoe. Her long hair flowed behind her like strands of night itself, shifting with the currents. Her skin shimmered faintly, pale like moonlit sand, glowing with subtle blues and silvers. Her eyes were ancient, patient, and deep enough to drown a man without water. She rarely surfaced. Mortals were beneath her notice, noisy creatures who polluted her waters with greed, fear, and arrogance. Most of them came with trembling hands, offering sacrifices, begging for mercy or blessings. She had seen it all. Except this man. This fisherman was different. He entered her river at night. Alone. Without fear. Without offerings. Without arrogance. She had watched him for seasons, curious despite herself. Each time she stirred the water, he adapted. Each time she shifted the currents, he adjusted his paddle. He studied her moods like he was learning the rhythm of a friend. Mortals feared the river. But this one understood it. Tonight, when he hummed, something inside her flickered, something she had buried centuries ago. She drifted closer, letting the sound vibrate through the water. Mortals usually screamed when they sensed her presence. This one paused, acknowledged her, and kept breathing steadily. If the river watches me tonight, then let it watch. No mortal had ever spoken to her like that. Not with fear. Not with worship. Just with acceptance. It shook her. She rose slowly, letting her form remain blurred by the water. But Kanu leaned forward, sensing something. His eyes scanned the river with curiosity rather than terror. She expected him to retreat. He did not. She expected him to avert his gaze. He didn't. Instead, he whispered softly, "You feel restless tonight, old river." Her heart gave an involuntary tremor. No mortal had ever spoken to her river like it was alive. Like it had emotions. Like it had company. She broke the surface slightly, a ripple, a faint glow. Enough to see how he reacted. Kanu only tilted his head thoughtfully. He did not scream. He did not run. He simply observed. She felt something unfamiliar coil in her chest. Curiosity. Interest. Or something more ancient, more dangerous. She wasn't sure. But she wasn't done with him. Not yet. When Kanu pulled his net back up, he noticed something strange. One of the fish caught in it shimmered brighter than the others. Its scales reflected moonlight in unnatural colors, blues, greens, golds, like polished gemstones. The fish was wounded. A gash ran along its side, glowing faintly like living light. Kanu frowned. "What happened to you?" he murmured, lifting the creature gently. He knew this was no ordinary fish. Even the air around it felt different. A sensible man might keep it, sell it, brag about it, or fear it. Kanu did none of those things. Instead, he studied it for a moment, sighed, and lowered it back into the river with both hands. The fish sank slowly, its luminous body fading into the current. "There," he said softly. "Go home." Below the surface, Nala froze. He had released her wounded messenger, without being told. Without being threatened. Without expecting any reward. Kindness for the sake of kindness. Mortals did not act like that anymore. He had broken the pattern. And pattern breakers were dangerous. She drifted back into the deep, her thoughts swirling with confusion. She had watched countless fishermen take what wasn't theirs and kill what they didn't need. But this one, let go. Gave back. Respected what belonged to the river. He had done something unexpected. And in the spirit world, the unexpected was the beginning of everything. Change, danger, fate. She sank deeper, unsettled, uncertain, intrigued. Hours passed before Kanu returned to the village. The huts glowed with dim lanterns, and the smell of roasted yam drifted through the air. Children played near the fires while elders told stories that had been passed down for generations. If this story pulled you into the river's mystery and left you wanting more, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps keep these stories flowing. And I would love to hear from you. Kanu walked past them quietly, carrying the small basket of fish he had caught. He greeted the elders with a respectful nod. They praised his catch. He smiled politely, but his mind was far away. He couldn't stop thinking about the ripple, the glow, the strange fish, and the feeling of being watched. He washed his hands and face, ate a simple meal, and sat outside his hut long after the fires burned low. Somewhere in the darkness, he could hear the river whispering against its banks. Most nights, that sound soothed him. But tonight, it felt like a voice calling. Soft, ancient, curious. He didn't know that beneath the surface, a goddess drifted restlessly, replaying every moment she had seen him. She didn't understand the pull she felt toward him, but she couldn't deny it. Mortals intrigued her rarely. Mortals impressed her even less. But Kanu, there was something about him she couldn't ignore. something she needed to understand, something she wasn't supposed to feel. And for the first time in centuries, the river goddess wondered what it would be like to step out of the water and be seen. The night after the strange encounter, the fisherman named Kanu sat alone in his small hut, staring at the dim lantern flame as it trembled in the wind. But his mind wasn't on the flame. It wasn't on the river. It wasn't even on the strange coldness he had felt on his wrist, where something unseen had touched him. His mind was on the silence. The kind of silence that follows you like a shadow. The kind that feels alive. He kept replaying the moment the river went still. Not calm, still. Like something was watching him from beneath it. And the voice, he heard it again, faint, not with his ears but somewhere inside his chest. Do not return at night. But warnings never worked on men whose lives had already taken enough from them. And Kanu was such a man. His wife had died 2 years ago. His village had turned its back on him when they blamed him for things he couldn't control. Fishing was the only thing left to him, and the river was the only thing that listened when he spoke. So even though he tried, truly tried, to obey the warning, his feet betrayed him. He found himself drawn back to the river the next night. Not out of stubbornness. Out of something far more dangerous. Curiosity. Curiosity is always the first crack in the wall between worlds. And once that crack appears, the entire world rearranges itself around it. The moon was low and red when Kanu reached the water. It was the same river he had crossed since childhood, but tonight it felt like a doorway, or a trap. He set his lamp beside an old tree stump and inhaled deeply. The air tasted strange. Heavy. Charged. He cast his net, but the river rejected it. The water pushed it back toward him, gently but unmistakably. Like a hand placing something back into his palm. A soft ripple circled his ankles. He froze. The water began to move with intention, spiraling, forming patterns he had never seen before. Then the spirals tightened, the river lifting into a thin column, shimmering like liquid moonlight. From inside that column, a figure began to form. First the outline of a woman. Then the exact shape of her face. Then the glow of her eyes. Not human eyes. Not goddess eyes either. Something in between. Something curious and conflicted. Her lips did not move, yet Kanu heard her clearly. You came back. He swallowed hard. I didn't mean to disturb you. No, she said. You meant to understand me. The words hit him like a hammer. Because they were true. And because no one, no human, no spirit, no living being, had ever spoken to him with that kind of clarity. She stepped forward, rising partly out of the water, her lower body still made of liquid, her hair flowing as if underwater. She looked young and ancient at the same time. This was Nala, the river goddess. Feared. Revered. Untouchable. Yet here she was. Studying him. Not with anger. With interest. Kanu didn't know the truth of that night. He didn't know he had done something no man had done in centuries. He had refused to flinch. When she brushed his wrist the first night, testing him, probing him, every man before him had recoiled. Some fainted. Some cried. Some ran. But Kanu? He looked right into the darkness and stayed still. It was not bravery. It was exhaustion. A man who has lost everything fears nothing, and a man who fears nothing draws the attention of gods. Because gods are attracted to contradictions. And Kanu was a contradiction she had not seen before. A man who had no fear, yet carried deep pain. A man who had nothing, yet walked like someone who still believed in something. A man who lived alone, yet his heart was still open. This fascinated her. It violated everything she knew about mortals. And Nala was not used to being surprised. What do you want from me? Kanu asked quietly, tightening his grip on the fishing spear. The goddess tilted her head, her voice almost amused. You think too much of yourself. I want nothing. Kanu lowered the spear, embarrassed. But, she added suddenly, I am curious. The word did something to him. Something unsettling. Curiosity from a goddess was not simple curiosity. It meant danger. It meant possibility. It meant he had stepped into a space very few mortals ever walked. What are you curious about? He asked. Nala moved closer, her face inches from his, her presence heavy enough to weaken the knees of any other man. You did not run from me, she said. And you are not afraid of the night. Her finger, made of water, lifted toward his chest. He expected coldness. But what he felt was warmth. A warmth that pulsed like a heartbeat. You carry sorrow, she whispered. But you carry it differently. Kanu's voice cracked. What does that mean? It means, she said, that you are not broken, only heavy. The words hit him so deeply that he had to look away. No human voice had ever read him like that. Certainly no goddess. Nala noticed his reaction and stepped back slightly, not out of fear, but out of consideration. Another strange thing. Another impossible thing. A goddess considering a human's feelings? This was becoming dangerous. Nala's tone changed. Her expression tightened. You should not be here, she said. Your presence disturbs the balance. Kanu frowned. Then why appear before me? She hesitated. Not long, but long enough to reveal the crack. I did not intend to, she said. I did not expect your mind to pull back to me. My mind. Yes, she said softly. Something in you called me. I felt it. Those words changed everything. A mortal calling a goddess? Impossible. Illogical. Forbidden. But he had done it without knowing. The moment he replayed her voice in his hut. The moment he wondered who she really was. The moment he returned to the water. He had drawn her. He had summoned her. Not with rituals. Not with sacrifices. With attention. Attention is a powerful thing. More powerful than fear. More powerful than worship. Attention creates a bridge. And through that bridge, something ancient had crossed. Nala took another step away, the water rippling anxiously around her feet. This is dangerous, she whispered. For both of us. What danger? Kanu pressed. She looked at him for a long time, studying the outline of his face as if memorizing it. And then she said the one thing that shifted the path of both their lives. I am starting to feel you too clearly. The meaning was unmistakable. A goddess, feeling something. For a fisherman. The river surged behind her. The wind changed direction. The moon dimmed behind a cloud. Something in the world had tilted. Something irreversible. Nala turned her back to him. When dawn comes, she said, you must forget what you saw. Forget what you felt here. Forget me. I can't, he said instantly. Her back stiffened. Then you will drown in what comes next. Those words were not a threat. They were a prophecy. She dissolved into water again, slow, controlled, elegant, and vanished beneath the surface. The river returned to normal. But nothing else did. Kanu stood frozen, breathing hard, trembling slightly. Not from fear. From realization. A goddess had not only noticed him. She had felt him. And the most dangerous thing of all? He felt her too. The next morning arrived quietly, but the quiet did nothing to calm Kanu. He moved through the village like a man walking in two worlds. People greeted him. He nodded back. Women washed clothes by the river. The children ran along the paths. The elders sat beneath the Udala tree sharing gossip as always. But Kanu wasn't there. His body moved. His hands worked. His eyes blinked. But his mind was still at the riverbank. Still replaying her voice. Still hearing the tremble she tried to hide. Still wondering why she stepped back as if she, a goddess, felt something she should not feel. The village was loud. But inside him, there was only one sound. The river. And the terrible, impossible truth. Nala had felt him. Even now, in broad daylight, Kanu could still sense something. A pull. A heaviness. A faint pressure in the air. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the feeling, but the feeling refused to let go. While Kanu tried to return to normal life, the goddess was anything but calm. Deep beneath the river, past the hidden trenches where light could not reach, past the ancient stones carved with forgotten runes, Nala rested on a throne of living water. Her entire kingdom stirred uneasily. Spirits moved in restless circles. Currents shifted without her command. Even the river's heartbeat, its natural pulse, felt different. All because she was different. Her attendants noticed the change. They whispered among themselves. Her priestesses watched her movements with caution. The water spirits who served her felt a strange tremble in her aura. No goddess was supposed to be disturbed by a mortal. But she was. Nala sat unmoving, her eyes glowing softly in the dark waters. She could feel him. Not his exact location, mortals were too clouded for that, but she felt his presence. His emotions. The weight of his thoughts. Last night, she had lied. He had not summoned her. Her own curiosity had pulled her toward him first. She felt the echo of sorrow in him, deep, restrained, and strangely silent. Most mortals cried, wailed, or bartered with the gods when they suffered. But Kanu carried his suffering like a secret. And secrets attract gods. She tried to meditate, tried to shut her mind, tried to quiet the water around her. But the moment she closed her eyes, she saw his face. Not the strong features. Not the roughness of a fisherman's life. She saw the grief behind his eyes. A grief that matched a part of her she had buried centuries ago. A part she vowed never to open again. Yet a crack had formed. By afternoon, Kanu's behavior caught the attention of a few villagers. Old women stared at him with squinted suspicion. Young men whispered that something was off about him. Even the chief's brother watched him too long. It was not because Kanu behaved strangely, he had always been quiet. Always carried himself with a kind of tired dignity. Always kept to himself. But today, he had an aura. A strange stillness. A withdrawn intensity. A haunted softness around the eyes. People are afraid of what they cannot categorize. And Kanu had become uncategorizable. An elder finally approached him as he mended a fishing net by the shore. "You look like someone who saw more than he should," the old man said. Kanu froze. He didn't respond. The elder leaned closer. "Be careful what your eyes chase, boy. Not everything in the water is meant to be looked at." Kanu looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" But the old man only chuckled and limped away. That evening, Kanu tried to force himself to stay away from the river. He chopped firewood. He fed the goats. He cooked yam. He swept his compound twice. He sharpened his spear for no reason. But the river called him. Not loudly. Not aggressively. Quietly. Patiently. Like something waiting for him to surrender. When the first star appeared, Kanu gave in. He walked toward the water. But tonight, something was different. The river was calm, yes. The moonlight danced across its surface, yes. The air was cool and empty, yes. But there was something else. A shadow. It moved beneath the surface, slow, smooth, and aware. He didn't see her form. He only felt her presence. Like the river itself was holding its breath. Kanu knelt and touched the water. It was cool. Normal. He leaned forward. The shadow stilled. A soft ripple brushed his fingers, purposefully. He inhaled. Nala. Nothing. Only silence. But deeper beneath that silence, something stirred. Curiosity. Conflict. And something dangerously close to longing. Tonight she did not rise. Tonight she did not speak. She watched. hidden, silent, studying him, as if trying to understand how a simple fisherman had become a disruption in her world. And in that stillness, Kanu spoke softly. I know you're here. The shadow trembled. I don't know what you want from me, he whispered, but I know what I want now. The water grew stiller. I want answers. Deep beneath, Nala's fingers tightened against the throne of water. She felt something ignite in her chest. Something she had suppressed for centuries. Interest, concern, attachment, forbidden, dangerous attachment. She rose silently through the water until her face hovered just below the surface. She did not break through. She did not show herself. But she listened. Kanu exhaled slowly. I will come here every night until you speak to me again. The ripples froze. A goddess was not supposed to feel pressure, not supposed to feel threatened by a mortal's persistence. Yet she felt something twist inside her, something she had no name for, something too close to fear. Not fear of him, fear for him, because the river belonged to her. But the land belonged to everything else. Spirits, beasts, curses, old gods who disliked interference. Kanu had placed himself in danger, and he had no idea. Then, without showing her form, her voice rose, not from the water, but from inside his mind, soft and trembling. Do not return tomorrow night. Kanu's breath caught in his throat. This voice was different, more human, more fragile. Why? He whispered. The water shivered. Because the river is not the only thing watching you now. Kanu's stomach tightened. What does that mean? No response. Only a sharp, sudden pull in the water, as if something massive moved behind her, waiting, circling, hungry. Something old. Something she could not control. Then her final whisper reached him. Kanu, leave before you make me break a law I cannot unbreak. And just like that, the presence vanished. The shadow disappeared. The river returned to silence. The night grew colder. Kanu stood there, staring at the water, understanding nothing except one truth. He was no longer just a fisherman. He was now a man caught in the gaze of a goddess, and in the path of something far more dangerous. Kanu tried to sleep that night, but sleep would not come. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard her last words echoing inside him. Leave before you make me break a law I cannot unbreak. It played again, and again, and again, until he sat upright in the darkness, his chest tight, his breath uneven. A goddess had warned him, not commanded him, not punished him, warned him. That alone was wrong. Gods did not warn mortals. They declared, they judged, they decided. A warning meant she feared something, or someone, on his behalf, and that disturbed him more than anything else. Outside, the night deepened. Drums from an evening ceremony faded away. The village settled into quietness. But the river had not settled. Kanu could feel it, like an invisible vibration under the earth. A low humming pressure in the air. A strange, almost electric tension that crawled along his skin. Finally he stood, wrapped a cloth around his waist, and stepped outside. He didn't walk toward the river. He just stood in the open air, staring at the path that led to it. Yet even from far away, he felt it again. That same pressure. That same awareness. That same silent gaze. Only tonight, it wasn't hers. Deep beneath the water, Nala moved restlessly. She tried to focus on the rhythm of the current. Tried to restore calm to her domain. Tried to be what she had been for centuries. Untouchable. Unshaken. Unreachable. But even the river reacted to her turmoil. Currents twisted unpredictably. Fish fled deeper than usual. The water shimmered with a faint, storm-like glow. A goddess was supposed to be in perfect harmony with her element. Tonight she was not. One of her priestesses, a small water spirit named Iri, approached cautiously. "My lady, the river beats strangely tonight." Nala closed her eyes. "I know. What troubles you?" Nala did not answer. Because how could she explain that a mortal face haunted her? That a mortal voice unsettled her? That a mortal's presence pulled at her with a force she could not define? How could she admit that she felt something she had forbidden herself from feeling? Iri shifted nervously. "Is it him?" Nala's eyes snapped open. "You speak too freely." But the spirit did not retreat. She was loyal, but young enough to be fearless. "My lady, the way the water moves when you think of him, it is not ordinary." "I am not thinking of him." "You are," Iri whispered. "And something else is thinking of him too." A cold silence filled the throne room. Nala's voice lowered. "What do you sense?" Iri hesitated. Then, "Something old has risen. Something that has not moved in many, many seasons." Nala's pulse thumped hard, because she knew exactly what that meant. Something had awoken. Something that should have stayed sleeping. Something that did not like mortals. And certainly did not like goddesses interacting with them. Nala rose from her throne. "Where is it now?" Iri shivered. "Near the riverbank, watching." Nala's breath trembled. Watching him. Kanu stood outside his home, the night cool against his skin. At first, he thought the unease in his chest came from Nala's warning. But the longer he stood, the colder the wind turned. The heavier the air felt. The darker the shadows became. Something else was here. A presence nothing like hers. Hers felt like water. Fluid, soft, inevitable. This one felt like stone. Ancient, immovable, predatory. Kanu swallowed hard, instincts warning him to go back inside. But curiosity burned stronger than fear. He stepped forward, peering toward the faint outline of the river through the trees. "Who's there?" he called lightly. The air stilled. Utter silence. Then, a whisper, too faint to be human, brushed the edge of his hearing. "Mine." Kanu's heart slammed against his ribs. He spun around. Nothing. But he felt the whisper settle on his skin like a cold hand. That was not Nala. That was not any river spirit. This was something older. Something wrong. A fear he had never known crept up his spine. For the first time since their encounter began, he felt the full weight of Nala's warning. He stepped backward, eyes scanning the trees. That was when he saw it. A shadow, tall and thin, standing among the palms. Motionless. Dark. Watching. His breath caught. His body froze. The shadow did not move toward him. It did not retreat. It simply stood there. A presence without form, without face, but filled with intention. And that intention felt hostile. Kanu forced his voice out. "What do you want?" The shadow tilted. A slow, unnatural, boneless motion. Then it whispered again. "Break her." Kanu stumbled back. "Break who? Break what?" The whisper thickened, echoing directly in his skull. "Break her, or be broken." His blood turned cold. Then, with sudden, terrifying speed, the shadow dissolved into the darkness, disappearing as if it had never been there. Kanu stood alone again, breathing hard, shaking, unsure if he had imagined everything. But the icy fear in his bones told him he had not imagined anything. Something had marked him. Something dangerous. Something that wanted him gone. And he wasn't even sure whether that meant gone from the river, or gone from life. Underwater, Nala felt it the moment the shadow reached Kanu. A violent ripple shot through her kingdom. The water churned. Energy crackled like lightning under the surface. She gasped, a surge of fear stabbing through her chest. "Kanu!" She moved, instantly. No hesitation. No restraint. No concern for divine protocol. With a force that shook the entire riverbed, she shot upward through layers of water, rising at a speed no mortal eye could follow. She breached the surface silently, her body forming from shimmering water and moonlight. And she saw him, standing alone, trembling, staring into the darkness where the shadow had stood. Her heart twisted painfully. She had arrived seconds too late. Nala's form shifted, condensing into the shape of a woman, a beautiful, ethereal figure with eyes glowing like deep water at night. She stepped toward him. Kanu. He spun around. His breath left him. How long have you been there? Long enough, she whispered, her voice weighed with fear she couldn't hide. Kanu took a step toward her. What was that? Who was that? Her eyes darkened. Something that should never have awakened. He swallowed. It spoke to me. What did it say? It said, break her. Or be broken. Nala's entire body went still. Then she whispered the words she never thought she would say to a mortal. You are no longer safe. Kanu's fear sharpened. Because of you? No, she whispered bitterly. Because something believes you matter to me. Silence fell. Heavy. Personal. Undeniable. Kanu felt his heartbeat slow in his chest. Matter. To her. He couldn't speak. He couldn't even think. Nala stepped closer, her voice dropping to a trembling whisper. Kanu, you must listen to me. There are ancient laws. Forces older than the river. They do not forgive attachment between gods and mortals. He stared at her. Attachment. Her breath caught. For a moment, her divine composure faltered. And in that moment, she looked almost human. Almost fragile. Kanu, she whispered, if you return to the river tomorrow night, I may not be able to protect you again. He stepped closer. Then teach me how to survive this. Nala stared at him. Shocked, conflicted, shaken. A mortal had never spoken such words to her before. But in Kanu's eyes she saw something she had not seen in centuries. A man willing to walk into danger. Not because he sought power. Not because he sought favor. But because he refused to run. And something inside her broke. Not in weakness. In surrender. To the truth she had tried so hard to bury. Kanu, she whispered, if you stay close to me, everything that hunts you will come. And everything that fears me will rise. He held her gaze. Then let them rise. The river fell silent. Even the wind stopped. And Nala realized. She could no longer distance herself. She could no longer pretend. She could no longer deny what had begun between them. Not even to herself. Kanu barely slept that night. Not because of fear. But because of everything he couldn't unhear. You matter to me. Attachment. Protection. Danger older than the river itself. He lay awake, staring at the palm branch ceiling of his hut, replaying the moment she stepped toward him, the trembling in her voice, the way she hesitated as if she was fighting herself. A goddess fighting herself. For him. No man could sleep after hearing that. By dawn, one decision had taken root so deeply inside him that nothing could shake it loose. He was going back to the river. No warning, no threat, no shadow could stop him. But he was not foolish. He needed answers. He needed knowledge. Because last night proved one thing. If something ancient wanted him gone, he could no longer remain an ordinary fisherman. He left his hut quietly, but the village was already whispering about him. He could feel eyes on him as he passed. The same old women who usually ignored him were now watching him with beads of suspicion. Hunters who once joked with him now pretended not to see him. Even children, who had never feared him before, paused in their games to stare. Something had shifted. Something people could feel. Fear spreads faster than truth. And the villagers felt something in the air. They just didn't know it wasn't Kanu they should fear. He approached the Udala tree where elders often gathered. This morning, They were already in heated conversation. The river is unsettled. It churned without wind last night. And the animals avoided the water before dawn. Something is waking. I can feel it in my bones. When Kanu stepped closer, they fell silent. One elder studied him with narrow eyes. You, he said slowly, have you offended the river? Kanu held his breath. No. The oldest man, his back bent with time, struck the ground with his staff. Do not lie. The river spirits are moving differently. They move when humans touch what they should not. Another elder leaned forward. Tell us, Kanu, what happened last night? His mind raced. He could not tell them. They would panic. They would accuse him. They would demand rituals, sacrifices, all things that would only draw more supernatural attention. So instead, he bowed respectfully. Nothing happened, he said quietly. I am only tired. The elders exchanged glances. Then the oldest one whispered, Be careful with the river, boy. The river does not forget. A strange chill passed through Kanu. Neither does the goddess, he thought. Deep beneath the river, Nala sat perfectly still. But inside her, nothing was still. She felt him awaken. She felt him think. She felt him choose. Mortals could never hide their decisions from gods of water. Thoughts flowed. Emotions rippled. And his decision hit her like a wave. He would come back. Even after the shadow's threat. Even after her warning. Kanu had chosen the river. Chosen her. A feeling rose inside Nala. Sharp, warm, terrifying. Foolish mortal. Brave mortal. Dangerous mortal. Iri, her young water spirit attendant, floated nearby, studying Nala carefully. My lady, Iri whispered. You feel unsettled. I do not, Nala replied sharply. You do, Iri insisted gently. Because he has chosen you. Nala's eyes flickered with something too complex to name. That is not what troubles me, she murmured. Then what does? Nala's voice lowered. It is the law. Iri tilted her head. The law that binds gods, she asked. No, Nala whispered, her expression tightening with an ancient pain. The law that punishes them. A terrible silence filled the water. Because only one law had the power to punish a goddess. The law of attachment. If a goddess formed emotional ties to a mortal, if she cared beyond the limits of divine neutrality, the river itself would strip her of her powers. And the ancient guardians would rise to destroy the mortal who stirred her heart. A double punishment. One for the goddess. One for the man who made her weaken. Iri's voice trembled. My lady, are you bound? Nala didn't answer. But her silence said everything. Instead of preparing his fishing nets, Kanu headed into the forest path toward one of the oldest huts in the village, the home of the forgotten priest. Most villagers believed the priest was half mad, half blind, and fully useless. But Kanu knew better. The priest had been the river's mouthpiece once. Before an old prophecy turned the village against him. When Kanu reached the hut, smoke leaked from the roof. The door was slightly open. Kanu, an old, scratchy voice said before he even knocked. Enter. Kanu hesitated. How did you? The river whispers. The priest answered simply. Kanu stepped inside. The hut was dark, filled with the smell of burning leaves and carved wooden idols. In the center sat the priest, thin, bald, eyes milky with age but strangely alert. You were visited, the priest said. Kanu stiffened. By what? The old man chuckled bitterly. If it was a what, he said, you would already be dead. Cold fear curled through Kanu's stomach. The priest leaned closer. What came to you was a who, and very few beings have the power to move in shadow without form. Kanu swallowed. What do you know? The old man tapped the floor 3 times with a wooden stick. You met a goddess, didn't you? Kanu's breath faltered. Do not lie, the priest interrupted. The river has not behaved this way in a century. The last time was when a mortal woman captured the heart of a guardian spirit. It ended in death. Kanu's pulse quickened. Is that what will happen to me? The priest studied him. No. Relief washed through Kanu. Until the priest continued. Yours will be worse. Kanu's voice grew strained. Why? The priest sighed deeply. Because a river goddess is not allowed to love. The word hit Kanu like a knife. The priest lowered his voice. If she chooses you, she loses herself. If she denies you, she breaks you. Either way, pain follows. Kanu's hands curled into fists. What about the shadow? The priest's face grew grave. That, he whispered, is the enforcer. A being born before the river. It wakes only when a goddess begins to feel. Kanu felt the room tilt. So it will kill me? If it must, the priest said softly. To stop her heart from straying. Kanu exhaled shakily. And if I continue seeing her? The priest looked at him with pity. Then you will not die quickly. Back beneath the water, Nala rose from her throne, her heartbeat echoing through the currents. She could feel the enforcer moving. Watching. Waiting for her to slip. Waiting for her to choose Kanu. She stepped forward, her form shimmering with tension. Iri, she whispered. Prepare the river. I must go to him. Iri's eyes widened. My lady, if you go again. I know, Nala said quietly. You risk awakening the deeper laws. I know. You risk binding yourself. Nala's voice softened with a mix of fear and longing. I know. Iri hesitated. Then why go? Nala closed her eyes. And the truth escaped her in a whisper. Because he will face the enforcer alone. And I cannot allow him to die. The river trembled. A goddess choosing a mortal. Against the very laws that created her. She rose. Through darkness. Through pressure. Through every boundary she had sworn never to cross. Toward him. Kanu left the priest's hut shaken, walking in a daze. The sky had darkened. Evening approached. And with every step, he felt the river growing stronger in his chest. Calling him. Beckoning him. Pulling him. He should run. He should hide. He should listen to the priest and sever all ties. But he didn't. Because beneath the fear, beneath the uncertainty, beneath the danger circling him, was something louder. He wanted to see her again. The goddess who warned him. The goddess who protected him. The goddess who trembled when she said he mattered. He reached the riverbank slowly. And the moment he stepped into the clearing, the water rose. Silent. Smooth. Like a creature breathing in. And she emerged. Nala. Her form more radiant than before, but her expression filled with worry and urgency. Kanu, she whispered. You should not have come. He stepped closer. And yet. I did. Their eyes locked. Mortal and goddess. And something ancient, forbidden, unstoppable linked between them. Not magic. Not destiny. Choice. And just as their connection deepened, the temperature dropped. The leaves froze midsway. The moonlight dimmed. The river darkened. A voice, low, inhuman, and echoing through the trees, rolled across the night. Nala. Her entire body tensed. Kanu felt a chill stab through his spine. The shadow stepped out from the tree-line. Not mist. Not trick. Not illusion. A tall, formless figure made of ancient darkness. No face. No eyes. Only presence. You break the law. The river goddess stepped in front of Kanu, shielding him. A gesture that confirmed everything the enforcer needed to know. And with a voice that shook the ground, the shadow delivered the sentence. The mortal dies. Nala gasped. No. Kanu froze. and the entire forest plunged into silence. Moments before all hell broke loose. The night had thickened like a living curtain over the river. Shadows clung to every tree and stone. Kanu's breath hitched as the dark figure, the enforcer, stepped fully into the clearing. It was impossible to discern a face. Its form shifted constantly, liquid darkness flowing with intent, limbs stretching and twisting in impossible ways. Yet its presence was unmistakable. A predator older than time itself, one who had witnessed the rise and fall of gods. Nala stepped forward, water flowing from her like a second skin. The river trembled beneath her, and the wind seemed to hold its breath. "You will not touch him," she said, voice steady but trembling beneath the surface. The enforcer paused, then tilted its head. Its voice was a whisper, but it echoed in every corner of the clearing, vibrating in Kanu's chest. "He belongs to the law." "The law bends for no one," Nala countered. Her hands glowed with a subtle luminescence. "And I choose to bend it." Kanu froze. The words shocked him. A goddess, choosing him. Against law. Against forces older than the earth itself. The pull of danger throbbed in his chest. His survival instincts screamed at him to run. But he couldn't. He couldn't look away from her, couldn't tear his eyes from the impossible figure of Nala standing between him and the enforcer. The enforcer advanced slowly, deliberate, each movement resonating with malice. The trees shuddered as if they too feared it. The shadows it cast were unnaturally long, curling around Kanu's feet like snakes. "Step aside," it commanded. Its voice was a blend of a roar and a hiss, vibrating in his bones. Nala's glow intensified, rippling through the water around her. The river seemed to respond, waves curling with force as if she were channeling its entirety. "Never. Not while I stand." The enforcer paused. Its dark mass seemed to shift, stretching impossibly tall. The wind howled in response, carrying whispers of ancient laws and old debts. Then it struck. The enforcer's shadow lashed outward like liquid steel. Kanu felt the air compress around him. The strike was not aimed at him directly, it was aimed at the goddess, but he moved instinctively, raising his arms. A wave of dark energy slammed into him. Pain exploded in his chest. His vision went white. For a heartbeat, he thought he would die. Then, as his world trembled on the brink of collapse, he felt something else, soft, warm, almost tangible. Nala had thrown herself in front of him, water erupting in a protective barrier that absorbed the enforcer's blow. The shockwave threw them both back several feet. Kanu hit the ground hard. Pain radiated through his ribs and shoulders, but he managed to lift his head. Nala hovered above the water, drenched, her eyes glowing with furious energy. The enforcer recoiled, seemingly surprised by her defiance. "You dare protect him?" it hissed. "I do not dare," she replied, voice ringing like a bell through the night. "I choose." Kanu's chest tightened. The weight of her choice pressed down on him. Not just the power of the river, but the impossible, frightening responsibility of surviving what no mortal had survived. The enforcer circled them like a shark, fluid shadows slipping over the surface of the earth, testing them, probing for weakness. Every step it took seemed to warp reality. The air thickening, the river swelling, the night growing darker. Kanu forced himself to stand. He could not run. Not now. Not after she had chosen him. He had to fight. He had to act. He grabbed his spear, the old worn weapon of his ancestors, and stepped forward, his legs shaking. He was no warrior, no soldier trained for battle against a being older than time itself. But desperation can make a man do impossible things. "Stay back," Nala called. "I can't," Kanu shouted. "I won't let it touch you," the enforcer hissed. Its shadow lashed outward again, faster this time. Kanu felt the darkness graze his arm. Pain flared. He gritted his teeth, spun, and jabbed the spear forward, aiming blindly, trusting instinct over skill. Something happened. Something impossible. The spear passed through the shadow but left a trace, a ripple, a tear in the darkness, like light piercing a shadow. The enforcer hissed, recoiling, its form warping and writhing violently. Nala's eyes widened. "You," she began, but the words caught in her throat. Kanu stared at his spear in disbelief. Somehow, he had grazed it. Somehow, he had left a mark on something eternal. It had never happened before. The enforcer shrieked, a sound that was felt more than heard. The night itself seemed to pulse with pain. Nala lifted her hands, water spiraling like twin whirlpools around her. She drew the river itself into her will, and the current surged toward the enforcer. Waves rose, slamming into it, forcing it back. But the enforcer was older than rivers. Older than water. It shrugged off the attack, darkness coiling around it, growing sharper, denser, more terrifying. "You cannot win," it whispered. "I do not seek victory," Nala replied. "I seek protection." The river surged higher, lifting Kanu onto the crest of a wave. For a moment, he felt weightless, suspended between fear and wonder. Nala's eyes met his, and he saw the depths of her desperation. The law she had broken, the choice she had made, all of it lay bare in her gaze. And then she whispered, "Trust me. Follow me." Kanu nodded, though he didn't fully understand. Trust. That was all he had left. The shadow twisted violently, striking with a speed that defied perception. Kanu barely ducked, the air buzzing as the darkness whipped past his head. The river itself hissed, steam rising as the clash between the goddess and the enforcer escalated. Nala's energy flared brighter than ever. Water lifted around her in impossible shapes, columns, waves, and whirls of pure light blue energy. She screamed a word that echoed across time, a command that shook even the shadow. "Be gone." The enforcer's form destabilized, its shadow rippling and breaking apart like ink in water. Kanu stumbled back, staring in awe. The impossible was happening. The goddess, in choosing him, had made herself stronger, and yet, more vulnerable. The shadow recoiled, shrieking, then evaporated into nothingness, leaving only a chilling echo in the trees. The river fell silent. The air cleared. The moonlight returned, soft and trembling over the trembling water. Nala sank into the river, breathing heavily. Kanu ran to her side, kneeling beside the water. "You saved me," he whispered. Nala's glowing eyes softened. "No," she said, her voice low and full of weariness. "We saved each other." Kanu reached for her hand. She allowed it, tentatively, almost afraid to let her touch linger. The warmth of her skin, or water, radiated through him. The danger was not gone. The enforcer had retreated, but it would return. And now it knew he mattered to her. But for the first time, Kanu realized something impossible. He no longer feared death. Not really. Because he had a goddess who had chosen him. And he would face whatever came next. Not as a mortal, but as her equal in courage, if not in power. The river whispered around them. Calm. Gentle. But the night had changed. The game had begun. And neither mortal nor goddess could retreat. The dawn broke with an uneasy light. A thin mist hovered over the river, curling and coiling as though it were alive, whispering secrets only the wind could carry. Kanu stood at the water's edge, staring at the mirror-like surface, still trembling from the night's ordeal. Every muscle in his body ached, yet it was not exhaustion that weighed on him. It was comprehension. He had faced something immortal. He had seen a force that predated humanity itself, and he had survived. And more terrifyingly, he had survived because of her. Nala sat on a rock, her form glistening with the river's remnants. Her hair, wet and dark, clung to her shoulders. Her eyes, still glowing faintly, were fixed on the horizon. She did not speak immediately, but Kanu sensed the storm beneath her calm surface, the storm of what she had done, what she had risked, and the laws she had defied. "You," he began, voice uncertain. "You could have died?" She finished for him, her tone quiet but cutting. "Yes, I could have. And the river might have let it happen if I hadn't intervened." Kanu felt the weight of her words press down on him. Mortals often think power is absolute. They do not understand the subtleties of divine restraint. They do not understand the cost of a goddess choice. You risked yourself for me, he said softly. Why? Nala did not answer immediately. Instead, she traced her fingers through the water, letting it ripple in delicate patterns. Because, she whispered, I should not have, and yet, I could not let you die. Not when something has taken notice of you. Kanu's heart pounded. Something had taken notice. The shadow, the enforcer, it was not a singular event. He realized then the true danger of proximity to a goddess. For a long while, neither spoke. The river moved in eerie calmness, its surface reflecting the sky in perfect clarity, as if pretending the night's horrors had never occurred. But both Kanu and Nala knew that was an illusion. Danger had marked them. Fate had shifted. Finally, Kanu broke the silence. I'm not afraid. Her gaze snapped to him. The first time in centuries, she saw something human within him. The fire that mortals rarely possess, the fire of unyielding courage. You don't know what's coming, she said. Her voice trembled, betraying the depth of the laws she had broken. You don't understand what it means to be chosen by a goddess. To be seen by something eternal. It brings death. Or worse. He stepped closer, ignoring the lingering ache in his body. I understand enough. Enough to know I won't turn away. A flicker of disbelief crossed her features. No mortal had ever remained so steadfast in the face of what she represented. Chaos, beauty, and danger rolled into one. You don't know the price, she said again, softer this time. Every choice you make now will echo in ways you cannot imagine. I'm willing to pay it, Kanu said, voice unwavering. Nala's lips parted, not in words, but in surprise. The river trembled beneath her, as if acknowledging that mortals could, indeed, defy expectation. The mist thickened. The trees swayed violently, though the air was still. A cold pressure gripped Kanu's chest, the same pressure from the night before. His stomach clenched. He knew the enforcer had not retreated far. It had been waiting, patient and inexorable. A low hiss rose from the mist, barely audible. And then, a figure emerged. The enforcer returned. Taller, more defined, darker. Its shadowy form swirled with a malevolent intent. Every inch of it radiated an ancient judgment. You break the law, it said. Its voice was a storm contained in sound, vibrating in Kanu's chest. You meddle with forces beyond mortal reckoning. Nala stepped in front of him instantly. Water surged around her, forming a protective cocoon that reflected her fury and fear. You will not touch him, she said, her voice cold, electric, and filled with authority. The enforcer paused, studying her. It had fought gods before, and yet it had never encountered such resistance paired with defiance. You risk everything, it hissed. I risk everything, Nala admitted, letting the words hang. Her aura flared, and the river itself responded, sending up waves and currents to shield them. The enforcer laughed, a sound without warmth, without mercy. Then, it is not a question of law. It is a question of survival. And mortals are fragile. Kanu stepped forward, spear in hand. Though his arms shook, his resolve did not. I am not fragile, he said. And I will not leave her. The shadow recoiled at the words, perhaps because it was unaccustomed to mortals speaking without fear, or perhaps because it recognized the defiance of choice, the defiance that even gods could admire. Nala extended her hand toward Kanu. Stay close, she whispered. The water around them rose, wrapping them in an ethereal cocoon. Kanu did not hesitate. He took her hand. At that instant, something shifted. The enforcer hesitated. The river surged. The air thickened with power neither mortal nor shadow could fully control. In that moment, the impossible became tangible. Two beings, mortal and divine, standing side by side, hearts aligned against the inexorable force of destiny. You are marked, Nala said softly. But together, we may survive. Kanu's jaw tightened. Then we face it. Together. The enforcer hissed, then vanished into the mist, retreating but not gone. Its threat lingered, a shadow on the edge of reality, a warning that the trials ahead were only beginning. Silence returned to the river, but it was a brittle silence, like glass waiting to shatter. Kanu and Nala remained by the water's edge, soaked, exhausted, but alive. The goddess looked at him, her eyes softening, almost human. "You don't know what you've done," she murmured. "You've chosen me. And in doing so, you've changed everything. The river, the law, even me." Kanu looked back, chest still heaving, but his eyes steady. "And I'd do it again. I'd face whatever comes, because I know now what matters." Her lips curved in a faint, fleeting smile, the first time she had smiled freely since he arrived. And though she would never admit it aloud, the warmth in her chest was something she had not felt in centuries. Hope. The river flowed gently around them, calm for the moment, but both knew better. The enforcer would return. The law would not be patient. And the path they had chosen together was fraught with peril. Yet, for the first time, mortal and goddess stood united. And sometimes, that was enough. The sun had barely risen, and yet the river already spoke. Its currents murmured through reeds and stones, carrying secrets that only those attuned could hear. Kanu stood at its edge, staring at the water as if it might answer the questions that churned in his mind. He had survived the enforcer's strike. He had stood beside Nala and lived. And yet, the memory of the shadow's cold whisper, "Break her, or be broken," lingered, a dark pulse behind his ribs. The river had been calm since dawn, almost deceptively so. A mirror of tranquility hiding the threat beneath. Kanu knew better than to trust appearances. Nala emerged from the water silently, her hair dripping in rivulets like liquid moonlight. Her eyes, still faintly glowing, betrayed a weariness that even centuries of divine endurance could not erase. "You heard it, didn't you?" she asked softly, her voice blending with the river's hum. Kanu nodded. "Everything. The whisper, the warning, the enforcer." Nala stepped closer, water swirling around her like a protective cloak. "There are things you do not understand, mortal. Forces older than the rivers themselves. Forces that even I cannot control." He swallowed hard. "Then teach me. I need to understand." Her gaze softened for a fraction of a second, just enough for him to catch it. The goddess, untouchable and eternal, allowed a human connection, a spark of vulnerability that she never permitted before. Nala moved gracefully to the river's center, letting her hands trace patterns across the water. The river responded instantly, waves rising and falling as though it were a living extension of her thoughts. "The enforcer," she began, voice steady but laced with urgency, "is no mere shadow. It was born before the rivers, before the mountains, before humans themselves. Its sole purpose is to enforce the law. It watches, it waits, and it strikes when the balance is broken." Kanu listened intently. The air felt charged, as if the river itself leaned closer, waiting for his reaction. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Why target me? I am just a fisherman." She hesitated, the answer dangerous even to speak. "Because you matter to me." And once a goddess chooses, once the heart bends toward a mortal, the enforcer awakens. It does not forgive attachment. It does not compromise. It will pursue until the law is satisfied or until it is stopped. Kanu's pulse quickened. He had known danger, had faced the shadow before, but hearing it explained, knowing the depth of its purpose, changed the nature of his fear. It was not a threat that could be reasoned with. It was inevitable. "And it will come again?" he asked. "Yes," Nala said softly. "And next time, it will not hesitate. Not even for me." She raised her hands, and the river rippled violently, revealing visions on its surface. Scenes danced across the waves, mortals lost to the enforcer, gods who had bent the law and paid the price, centuries of history etched into water. Kanu watched, his heart tightening. Each image was a warning, a lesson carved in living memory. Every choice has consequences, Nala whispered. Every attachment leaves a mark. And every mortal who draws a goddess into the world of men carries the weight of eternity. He felt the weight settle on his shoulders, heavy but strangely grounding. He was not a hero. He was a mortal. Yet he had chosen. And in choosing, he had set in motion events that even gods could not predict. The river calmed, leaving a gentle ripple across the surface. Nala looked at him, her expression unreadable. You could leave, she said. You could walk away now. Forget what has happened. Forget the risk. Forget me. Kanu shook his head. I can't. Her eyes softened, but the warning in her gaze was clear. And if you stay, I stay, he said. I face whatever comes. With you. She nodded slowly. A ripple of approval spread through the water, almost as if the river itself acknowledged his choice. You must understand, she said, this is not just attachment. It is a bond that will draw the enforcer every time. The price is high. Mortals do not survive without preparation, and I cannot always protect you. Kanu's hands clenched, but his resolve did not waver. Then teach me. Make me ready. Nala studied him, her gaze piercing, searching for any trace of hesitation. Finding none, she spoke with a quiet authority. Then you will learn. But know this, every lesson will be painful. Every step toward survival will test your body, your mind, and your heart. Kanu nodded. I'm ready. Nala gestured toward the river. The first lesson is not strength. It is awareness. The river will teach you, but only if you listen. Do not fight its current. Do not resist its flow. Move with it. Anticipate it. Trust it. Kanu stepped into the water cautiously. The cool current licked at his skin, tugging at his legs, whispering like 1,000 voices. Feel it, Nala said. The river is alive. It can sense danger, it can sense weakness. And if you fail to sense it too, it will betray you. He nodded, letting the current guide his movements. At first, it was disorienting. The water pulled him this way and that, forcing him to adjust instinctively. But slowly, he began to understand. Every wave, every ripple, every subtle movement in the river carried meaning. You are learning quickly, Nala observed. Few mortals ever do. The river likes you, Kanu. But the enforcer will not. The words chilled him, but he continued, trusting her guidance. As he moved, he felt a sudden drop in temperature. The river trembled. Mist rose unnaturally, curling like black smoke. The enforcer was near. Its whisper slithered through his mind. Break her, or be broken. Kanu froze. The words threatened to overwhelm him, but he remembered Nala's earlier teaching. Trust the current, trust the flow, trust what you can control. He exhaled slowly, focusing on the water beneath his feet. The river responded, its current stabilizing, pushing against the shadow's influence. From the corner of his vision, he saw her, Nala, eyes glowing with fierce determination. The enforcer recoiled as if sensing the combined force of mortal resolve and divine power. For the first time, Kanu felt not just fear, but a sliver of hope. The mist began to fade, the river settled, and the first light of dawn reflected across the water. Kanu emerged, dripping and exhausted, but alive. Nala stepped beside him. You are changing, she said softly. Every choice you make now binds you further to me, and binds me to you. He looked at her, chest heaving. Then we face it together. Always. Her lips curved into a faint, fleeting smile, but her eyes were solemn. Together, she agreed. The river whispered around them, as if acknowledging the pact. But the enforcer's shadow lingered just beyond sight, a reminder that every choice had a price, and the next encounter would test them both beyond anything they had yet endured. Kanu and Nala stood together at the water's edge, mortal and goddess, bound by choice, courage, and something that even the oldest laws could not break, trust. And as the river flowed around them, both knew one immutable truth: the game had only just begun. The night was thick and suffocating, the kind that pressed down on the skin and whispered fear into the bones. Kanu and Nala had returned to the river after the morning's lessons, their bond strengthened, their resolve tested, but the enforcer's presence lingered like a dark pulse in the air. The river was restless. Ripples danced unnaturally, and the wind carried a cold that seemed to come from the earth itself. Kanu felt it immediately, a sensation he had learned to recognize. The enforcer was near. Nala stood beside him, calm but tense. Her fingers brushed his shoulder, a fleeting connection that grounded him. "It's coming," she said softly. "And this time, it will not hesitate." Kanu swallowed hard. "Then we face it. Together." Her eyes softened, but her voice carried the weight of centuries. "Together. But remember, Kanu, mortal strength alone will not be enough." Without warning, the mist thickened along the riverbank. Shadows curled unnaturally, and the enforcer emerged, taller, darker, more imposing than before. Its form rippled like liquid night, and the very air seemed to vibrate with its presence. "You are persistent," it hissed, its voice a sound that vibrated deep within the bones. "You defy the law, mortal." Kanu tightened his grip on his spear. He was no warrior, but he had learned, had adapted. His muscles tensed, ready to react. Nala raised her hands, summoning the river's energy. Water spiraled around them, glowing faintly under the moonlight. "You will not touch him," she declared. The enforcer paused, assessing. Then, with impossible speed, it struck, shadow lashing toward Kanu like a living blade. He ducked instinctively, letting the movements he had learned from Nala guide him. The shadow sliced through the air, missing him by mere inches. The river hissed, responding to Nala's fury. Waves rose like guardians around them, but the enforcer was relentless, testing their limits, probing for weakness. Kanu lunged forward, spear in hand. He no longer moved blindly. He had learned to anticipate the shadow's strikes, to read the rhythm of its attacks. The air buzzed with tension as his mortal instincts collided with the ancient force before him. The spear grazed the shadow, leaving a ripple, a fracture in its darkness. The enforcer recoiled slightly, then advanced again, faster, more vicious. "You are stronger than expected," it hissed. "But strength alone will not save you." Nala's eyes blazed. "It will not be strength alone," she said. "It will be trust. Trust in yourself, in the river, and in me." Kanu felt a surge of determination. Every lesson, every trial, every moment he had spent learning to navigate the river and its currents had prepared him for this. He would not falter. Nala lifted her hands higher, summoning the river in full force. Water erupted around them, forming barriers, spirals, and currents that seemed to think and move with intention. The enforcer struck against it, but each blow was absorbed, redirected, or deflected. "You will not win," Nala said, her voice echoing with power and fear combined. "Not tonight." Kanu stepped forward, following her lead, moving with the river's flow, using its currents to guide his movements, to anticipate attacks, to strike when the shadow exposed itself. For the first time, he felt not just mortal courage, but a synergy with Nala and the river itself. He was no longer a mere fisherman. He was a partner in a battle that defied mortal comprehension. The enforcer twisted, shifting form, becoming more fluid, more terrifying, a darkness that defied shape or reason. It lashed out again, striking with intent to destroy. Kanu felt the shadow graze his side, pain exploding in his ribs. He stumbled, but Nala was immediately there, her hands sweeping through the water, creating a protective barrier that absorbed the blow. "You are reckless," she said, her voice tight with anger. "You risk too much." "I am learning," he shouted back, refusing to be shaken. "I am not afraid anymore." The shadow paused, as if surprised by his declaration. Mortals, it had learned, rarely faced it with such unflinching defiance. Nala drew the river into a massive surge, channeling her power and his trust into a single force. The water surged like a living entity, wrapping around the enforcer, pressing it back, forcing it to retreat momentarily. Kanu lunged forward, spear extended, striking at the shadow once more. A fracture appeared in the darkness, a ripple that spread like a wound. The enforcer shrieked, a sound that shook the trees and rattled the night. Then, in an instant, it retreated into the mist, vanishing for the moment, leaving only a lingering sense of malice and threat. Breathing heavily, Kanu and Nala stood together, water dripping from their bodies, hearts racing. "You survived," Nala said softly, almost in disbelief. "We survived," Kanu corrected, looking into her eyes. Her gaze softened, and for a moment, the weight of divine law and mortal peril fell away. They were just two beings, bound by choice, trust, and something older than the rivers themselves. But the night had taught them a painful truth. The enforcer would return. And next time, it would not hold back. The river settled into calm again, but neither Kanu nor Nala trusted the stillness. Danger lingered, a constant shadow over their bond. Kanu reached for her hand. "We will face it," he said quietly. "Whatever comes, together." Nala's eyes glimmered with emotion, fear, admiration, and something she dared not name. "Yes," she whispered. "Together. But know this, Kanu. Every choice now has consequences beyond your understanding. Every moment with me will test you." He nodded. "Then I choose every moment." The river whispered around them, gentle yet insistent, carrying the unspoken promise of future trials, of love, of danger, and of choices that could alter the fates of both mortal and goddess. And somewhere in the shadows, the enforcer stirred, patient, relentless, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. The game was far from over. The night had settled like a velvet shroud over the river, deeper and darker than any before. Mist clung to the water in thick, undulating curtains, hiding shapes that moved too fast for the eye to follow. Every ripple, every wave, whispered of the impending reckoning. Kanu stood at the edge of the river, spear in hand, chest heaving. His muscles ached from days of training, from battles both physical and psychological. But exhaustion was irrelevant. Fear had long fled, replaced by focus, determination, and the unshakable bond with Nala. Beside him, the goddess adjusted her stance. Her eyes glowed, brighter than the moonlight reflected on the water. Every inch of her body radiated tension, power, and resolve. The river responded, swirls and currents rising as if in anticipation of the coming storm. "This is it," she whispered, voice barely audible over the wind. "The enforcer will not hold back. Tonight, either we end it, or it ends us." Kanu nodded, feeling the weight of mortality pressed against eternity. "Then we finish it. Together." A hush fell over the clearing. Even the wind seemed to pause, waiting. Then, a ripple darker than the night appeared along the riverbank. The enforcer emerged. Taller, more terrifying, more fluid and chaotic than ever before. Its shadow stretched across the water, consuming the moonlight, twisting the very air into a tangible darkness. "You persist," it hissed, voice vibrating through the trees, the earth, and Kanu's bones. "You defy the law. You are not prepared. You cannot survive." Nala stepped in front of him immediately, her aura flaring in defiance. The river responded, water rising around them in defensive spirals and whirls of luminescence. "You will not touch him," she declared. Her voice carried the weight of centuries, of divine authority, and mortal desperation intertwined. The enforcer paused, studying her, its formless face rippling with malevolence. Then it struck. Darkness exploded outward in liquid tendrils, aiming directly for Nala. Kanu moved instinctively, pushing forward to intercept. He was mortal, fragile, and untrained, yet he had learned. Every lesson with the river, every confrontation with the enforcer, every moment spent trusting Nala had prepared him for this. The shadow struck him first, grazing his shoulder, pain igniting in his chest. He staggered but did not fall. He felt the river surge beneath his feet, guiding him, giving him balance, giving him strength. Nala reacted instantly. Water erupted around him, forming a protective shield that absorbed the enforcer's strike. The shadow shrieked, a sound that reverberated through reality itself. "You are persistent," it hissed again. "But persistence will not save you." Kanu looked at Nala. Her gaze met his, and in that instant, he saw the unspoken command: trust, move, fight, together. Kanu lunged forward, spear in hand, timing his strikes with Nala's manipulations of the river. They moved as one, mortal instinct and divine will in perfect synchronicity. The water swirled, surged, and struck the enforcer repeatedly, forcing it back. The shadow twisted violently, striking at them with impossible speed, but Kanu anticipated its attacks. Each strike he dodged or deflected weakened it further. The river seemed alive, responding to Nala's fury and his resolve. "You are more than a mortal," Nala whispered as she raised her hands. "You are my equal in courage. But the choice is yours to make." "I choose to fight," Kanu said, voice steady, heart racing. "With you. No matter the cost." The enforcer hissed, recoiling. Mortals rarely fought with such fearlessness, and gods rarely tolerated such audacity. Nala summoned the river in a massive surge, lifting it into a column of energy that shimmered in moonlight. She and Kanu stepped into the flow together, the currents wrapping around them like armor. "You must strike together," she commanded. "One without the other will fail. Mortals alone cannot pierce this darkness. But with me, you can channel the river's power." Kanu nodded, taking a deep breath. The river surged beneath them. He focused, channeling every lesson, every instinct, every ounce of courage he possessed. The enforcer lunged, faster than thought, shadow twisting in impossible shapes. Kanu and Nala moved as one. Spear and water, courage and power, mortal and goddess, together they struck. The enforcer screeched, a sound that tore through the night, bending reality. The spear struck true, piercing a gap in its darkness. Water wrapped around it, constricting, glowing, purging the shadow in luminescent waves. The enforcer shrieked again, convulsing, form destabilizing. Kanu felt the force of eternity pressing against him, but he held firm. Nala's voice rang in his ears. "Trust the river. Trust yourself. Trust us." The shadow writhed violently, its form breaking apart into fragments that dissolved into mist. The river churned violently, glowing brightly as if purging the last remnants of malevolence. Finally, with a final scream, the enforcer dissipated, leaving only silence. The air was heavy, the river calm but trembling, as if it, too, had been tested to its limits. Kanu collapsed onto the bank, chest heaving, body trembling. Nala knelt beside him, hands glowing softly as she drained away residual pain. "You did it," she whispered, awe and relief mingling in her voice. "We did it," he corrected, voice raspy but proud. "Together." For the first time, they allowed themselves to breathe, to feel the magnitude of what they had survived. Mortal courage had met divine power, and together, they had defied the inevitable. The river flowed gently again, moonlight reflecting off its surface. Nala reached for Kanu's hand, and he took it without hesitation. The touch was electric, charged with unspoken promises and the depth of shared trials. "You are more than I ever imagined," Nala said, voice soft. "Not just for surviving, but for standing beside me, choosing me, even knowing the cost." Kanu looked into her eyes. "And I will keep choosing. Every time. Whatever comes." Her lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Then we face eternity together." The river whispered around them, gentle but insistent, carrying their bond, their victory, and the unbroken promise of a mortal and goddess united in trust, courage, and love. Even as the night faded, the enforcer had been defeated, but the lessons remained. Courage could rival power, choice could defy law, and a mortal's heart could hold the strength of gods. They were changed, bound forever, not just by trials, but by the deep, unspoken truth of their connection. And for once, the river, the night, and the world itself seemed to acknowledge it. The game had ended, for now. But the river whispered of future trials, of challenges yet unseen, and of a bond that would endure beyond mortality and divinity alike. And Kanu and Nala, mortal and goddess, stood together, unbroken, unafraid, and unstoppable. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps the YouTube algorithm share this story with other amazing people just like you who will enjoy it too. And don't forget, drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what part moved you the most and what kind of story you'd love to hear next.